Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Bedtime Stories. Thank you for joining me today, my dear children. I hope you all know what to do by now. Have you brushed your teeth? And are you cozy in your pajamas? Is that a yes? All right then, let's get started. So where did we leave off last time? Can any of you remember? I can't remember as well. I think we read so much. We're halfway through the book. So that's a really good sign. Now, get comfortable while I start to read bedtime stories. This is also for knowledge. Just 5 or 10 minutes every night before you go to bed is really good for you. This chapter is called The Treasure House. Who knows what treasure is? I bet you'd like to find some treasure in your house. Long, long ago in the lands of Egypt, there lived a tribe known as the children of Israel. Karen and Korah was the man of the children of Israel. During these days, the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, but he left his people and became a trusted minister of Pharaoh, who was a tyrant king. So, as we know, the Prophet Musa alayhi salam was sent down to send a message. Then he became almost like a secretary to the Pharaoh, who was a bad king. Korah became so rich that the keys of his treasures were too heavy even for several strong men to carry. Instead of being grateful to Allah, he chose to behave as if he was much better than others just because he was rich. He was bad to people and he would be very, very rude. His people told him how wrong this was, and he asked him to spend his money on charity and good works from the wealth that Allah has given him. But he went on as before, arguing that the money he has, was all because he's clever and all because he has knowledge. But that's not true. We're not allowed to say that. When we have things, we must always thank Allah first. When he was showing off the glitter of his great wealth, those who loved the worldly life said, "We wish we could be rich like Korah too. Surely he is the man of great fortune." But those who had been given true knowledge, said, "Alas for you, the reward of Allah in the hereafter is better for him who believes and does good work, and none shall receive it except those who have borne or all wills without complaint." So those who accept what Allah has willed for them. The Prophet Musa alayhi salam cursed Korah. His name was Korah, or you could say Korah. So Allah made the earth swallow him up, along with his treasure house. Seeing this terrible end of Korah, those were on the day before had longed to be like him, began to say, "Oh no, we wanted to be like him. Allah gives us much to whom he wills and little to whom he pleases." This punishment that Allah gave to that man, Korah, is a great reminder to the believers to be pleased with Allah and to thank him, whether they are rich or whether they are poor. Now, because the Prophet Musa alayhi salam is a prophet and he is a messenger, he made a special dua to Allah. he made a curse for Korah, also known as Koran. And so he asked Allah to destroy everything this man had. And Allah listened and Allah destroyed him. So now the earth swallowed him up into the ground. So remember, children, we must always be grateful for what we've got, even if it's a small toy, even if it's something not too big and our parents buy it for us, or our siblings, or our friends. We must always be grateful and thank Allah first. Now, Prophet Musa meets a wise man. The Prophet Musa alayhi salam meets a wise man is the next chapter. As per Allah's order, Prophet sets out with his young followers called the disciples, Yusha bin Nun, to meet Al-Khair. At a certain point, the fish they were carrying to eat revived and slipped away in the sea. They did not know that the fish was lost and it had already gone. So when Prophet Musa alayhi salam went to meet a boy called Al-Khair, this is when the fish got away. As predicted, this is where they found Al-Khair, probably an angel in the form of a man. May I follow you and be guided by your knowledge? Musa alayhi salam asked Al-Khair. Agreed, I will let you follow me, he said. But do not ask me lots of questions about what I do and the things you will see until I tell you, until I mention it to you. The two then embarked upon a ship, whereupon Al-Khair bored a hole in it. They went on a big ship and Al-Khair decided to put a hole in the ship. Now remember, before Al-Khair said not to ask any questions, didn't he? He told Musa alayhi salam, you may follow me, but do not ask me lots of questions. So guess what happened next? When Al-Khair put a hole in the boat, Musa alayhi salam exclaimed. He said, what are you doing? Do you want to drown the passengers? Al-Khair replied, didn't I tell you not to ask me any questions? That you would not bear with me, you will not have patience with me. So Yusuf alayhi salam said, forgive me. Then they carried on until they met a young boy whom Al-Khair didn't like very much and wanted to get rid of him from the area. Musa alayhi salam frowned and said, what are you doing? This is very bad. You cannot get rid of an innocent soul. Didn't I tell you, Al-Khair replied, that you would not be patient? Musa alayhi salam said, I'm sorry, if I ever question you again, please leave me, abandon me, for then I should never ever do it again. Now let's see if Musa alayhi salam can carry on being patient, or do you think he's going to ask lots of questions? What do we think, children? I don't know. I think Musa alayhi salam might ask more questions and Al-Khair might be fed up and say, do you know what? I don't want you to follow me or come with me anymore because you keep asking me questions and I told you not to. Shall we find out what's going to happen? Okay. Then they came to a big city and they asked for food, but they were refused. Seeing a wall that was crumbling, Al-Khair repaired it. But Musa alayhi salam once again spoke and said, why are you doing this? He objected to this. doing so without payment. Now we must part. Al-Khidr said to Musa alayhi salam, but first I will explain to you my actions which seem to be dreadful to you. So now I'm going to explain to you those things that you could not be patient about. So he started to explain. Now, I first damaged that ship because it belonged to a poor fisherman, and nearby there was a king who would plunder every vessel. So why he put the hole in the boat was so that the king doesn't hurt the poor fisherman. So he stopped him from going out into the sea by putting a hole in his boat. Therefore, the fisherman would be safer rather than going into the sea and being hurt or killed by the horrible king. Now, the second thing, as for the youth, the young boy that I wanted to get rid of, he would only be a distress to his believing parents, and with his wickedness and his unbelief. We prayed that their Lord would replace him with a more righteous and good son. So that's why he wanted to get rid of the other boy, because the other boy was bad and horrible and wasn't being nice to his parents. And the wall belonged to 2 orphans, sons of an honest man in the city. Beneath it there lay a treasure buried. Your Lord decreed that they should dig it up when they grew to manhood. What I did was not by my own will, explained Al-Khair. That explains what you could not bear to watch with patience. All this shows that the highest divine wisdom sometimes appears to bring calamity. Man's limited knowledge and lack of the future can cause him to grieve, overseeing some bad things. So sometimes Allah puts bad things in this world because it's a lesson for us to learn. And sometimes we find things difficult, but then it will be easy after because Allah will make it easy for us. But the true believer never flinches at this time, for he knows that the loving hand of Allah unceasingly directs humanity towards him, the goal of the greatest good. This is the lesson of the story of Al-Khair, is to bear patience, and Allah will give us goodness after we are patient. The Prophet Uzair's donkey. This sounds quite interesting. Prophet Uzair's donkey. The Prophet Uzair, or we could say Ezra, was a pious man. He had a donkey on which he used to travel far and wide. Once he was passing through a lonely city. The houses were all crushed down and broken, and no one lived there. How can Allah give life to this city now that it is dead? The city was all damaged and the houses was not livable. Prophet Uzair was wondering what would happen. There and then Allah caused him and his donkey to die. Just like that, on the spot, him and his donkey just died. Allah brought Uzair back to life after 100 years. If Allah wants to take you now, He can. And if Allah wants to bring you back, He can. But the donkey on which he had been travelling on was reduced to bones. Allah reunited the bones, clothed them with flesh, and gave life to the donkey. How long have you stayed away? Asked Allah. A day? A part of a day? Replied a puzzled Uzair. Known then, said Allah, that you have stayed away 100 years. Subhanallah, that is amazing. He was so amazed to see his food and drink was intact and fresh. Seeing all this happening in front of him, in front of his eyes, Uzair was struck dumb and exclaimed, I know that Allah has power over all things. I know the story is told to reaffirm belief in the hereafter and life after death. So this story, as we know about Uzair, he was a prophet and he didn't disbelieve, but he doubted, how could Allah fix this town that was terribly broken and the houses were ruined? So what did Allah do? Allah put him to sleep. Allah took his life. So he was dead, him and his donkey, for 100 years. And then after 100 years, Allah brought them back to life again. Because Allah is the most powerful. He can do anything He likes. Now we've got a really nice, interesting chapter here. It's called The Great King and the Iron Wall. Are we still okay? Are you comfortable? Long, long ago, during the 6th century BC, King Dur-Kalnain ruled the land from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River. He was just a righteous, protecting the weak and punishing the lawbreakers. Dhul-Qarnayn was a good king. He wasn't a bad one like the Fir'aun. When he took his armies to the northeast of Iran, he reached the mountain range which run between the Caspian and the Black Sea. Once in that region, he met some people who begged him to protect them from the wild tribes. Back then, they used to be called tribes and groups. So these groups or tribes of people called the Ya'juj and the Ma'juj, also known as Gog and Magog, who kept coming through the mountain passes and attacking them. They were really horrible people. Dhul-Qarnayn, the king, asked for iron blocks and molten brass, and with the help of the local people, he built a barrier across the valley to hold back Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Gog and Magog. After conquering a major part of the inhabited world, Dhul-Qarnayn had lost none of his humility. Dhul-Qarnayn was a kind king, and he wanted to protect these people who were afraid of Gog and Magog, Ya'juj and Ma'juj, these horrible tribes near the mountain, Caucasus Mountains. I think they lived, so it was near the Caspian and the Black Sea. That's where they were, the Caspian and the Black Sea. He gave the entire credit for his feasts to the blessings of Allah of the Iron Wall. He had built, he said, "This is the blessing from Allah, my Lord. The promise has been filled. But, there was a but. Dhul Qarnayn said, but, even though the wall is a blessing from Allah now, when the promise of my Lord has been filled, He will level it to dust, and the promise of my Lord is true. So, my darling children, when Allah's promise is a promise, the walls will come down. We may not witness the walls, but the wall is true, the wall to protect the people from Majuj and Yajuj. Yajuj and Majuj, Gog and Magog. Okay? Now there's more to this story, but I just made it brief for you. Okay? And you can research it yourself as well. Why don't you type in Yajuj and Majuj and find out why they were a bad tribe? And I have lots more stories to tell you. I am looking forward to seeing you again in our next episode of Bedtime Stories. I hope you've had a wonderful evening. Please go and brush your teeth and get ready if you haven't already. Get ready for bed and have a good night. I will see you again soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.